Birkett here, along with Carlos Monarrez from the Detroit Free Press. A little mid-February Zoom, Carlos. We've got free agency on the horizon, the draft after that. The Lions have a franchise tag decision to make here coming up in the next couple of weeks. Let's talk about all of that here as we head into the start of the new league year. Get ready for the start of the new league year. And the first order of business, I guess, for the Lions is on Tuesday, the franchise tag period starts. And I wrote a little bit about that this weekend. Kenny Golladay, obviously a prime candidate for the tag. I don't know if the Lions want to re-sign him or if he's worth re-signing for the Lions, given their situation long term. Romeo Okwara, I guess you could make the case that you'd want to tag him too. A young pass rusher. From your seat, either one of those guys worth a franchise tag in your eyes, and why or why not?
Yeah, I would definitely say Golladay. I think that he's a little bit more of a proven playmaker than Romeo is. That's a premium position, outside receiver, deep threat potential. He was hurt a lot of last season, but I think he has enough of a track record that we've seen what he can do. He's a special receiver, goes up and gets the ball in the air, can beat double coverage sometimes. I think you mentioned something about that in your column today, explaining why he should be franchised. But I think you said something along the lines that his age doesn't exactly mesh with the timetable for the Lions rebuild if you want to sign him to a long-term extension. And I do agree with that. I think that we don't know what the Lions are going to be and how soon they're going to get there. So, tying up a lot of capital on a guy that you may not utilize. And I think a deep threat receiver, outside receiver, is just never money poorly spent. But if you do need to plug up holes, if you do need to address the defense more initially, not committing so much capital to one position that might not have maximum utility in the next couple of years. I don't know. I do think that the franchise tag kind of hedges your bet. It gives you some flexibility. So I would go. I like Romeo. Every time we write about this in free agency, everybody let's tag both of them. Well, you can't. So you got to choose one. And I like Romeo, but I think he knows he'll get a better deal on the open market, and the Lions probably can find some way to replace close to his production easier than they could Golladay.
Well, and I would think they would still try to re-sign Romeo. It's just, as you mentioned, the Lions have some work to do to get under the cap and then to make all these pieces fit, right? Golladay at the franchise tag, it's going to be $15.5 or $16 million a year. So that's not an easy thing that the Lions can do. Just snap their fingers and fit him in. And then if you want to sign Romeo beyond that, there are some easy cuts if they need him, in the secondary, even on offense, defensive line. I mean, there's a number of guys where they can shave some of that salary and not really miss their production from what they had last year. But I think you're right, Carlos. To me, look, Romeo Okwara is a good player. He had 10 sacks last season, but he had 10 sacks in the 4 years before that too. So I don't know that he's the long-term answer at defensive end. As young as he is, he's younger than Golladay. And the right fit for this scheme if they're going to more of a 3-4, where he's excelled as a hand in the dirt, sort of 4-3 end, and maybe you need a more of a stand-up rusher. So I like Romeo. I think if I was the Lions, I would try to bring him back, but maybe not at that franchise tag salary either, given the years of production that he's had. Galladay's a little different story. Obviously, he's had the injuries, but I think when he's been on the field, he's been one of the better receivers in the game. He's a top, 5-7 free agent right now. And I think he's going to command a huge contract on the open market. And if I'm the Lions, I think there's value in keeping him around right now. There's value potentially in, extracting some return for him in a trade, whether it's now or in the future. And I know that you'd be in line to get a 3rd round compensatory pick, depending on your own free agent spending, if you're the Lions, if you let him go. But then the other point is, Carlos, exactly what you said, right? Galladay's a good player, and it's not just about age; it's where he's at in his contract. All that stuff that by the time the Lions are ready to contend in 2 or 3 years, is Golladay that still going to be that guy? Where is he going to be at in his contract? So as much as I thought the Lions should have re-signed him last year, and I thought he was a fit for what, Matthew Stafford and that offense were doing. And I still think he can be a fit going forward. I just don't know if it's the right move for the organization to sign him long-term now. And I hate to say that from a player standpoint, because, I'm always on the player side where, hey, get the money that you can, use whatever leverage you can. But when you look at this from the Lions point of view, franchising Kenny Golladay and then potentially trying to trade him, whether it's, before the draft or before the trade deadline next year, that's the right thing for the organization to do.
And have we seen any telltale signs? Like, has he put his lakefront home up for sale, Dave? Is that can we discern anything from that? Has he asked for a meeting yet with Sheila Ford or anything? Or
judging by his Instagram, he's down in Miami, spending a lot of time on the ocean right now. So, he's spending his free agent dollars. I think that's what to be discerned by his social media activity. But no, I am on the hunt for, we're waiting for Matt Patricia, see if his house goes up for sale. I know Jim Caldwell, when he put his up, that gallery did well. So hopefully we'll bring you pictures of that in due time. So real estate, that's my second hobby over here, second beat. So we'll make sure
let me ask you something. You brought this up with Golladay. I don't know how much longer you want to spend on Golladay, but just, you mentioned that there may be this getting to know each other period between him and the new staff.
Yeah.
Do you see him as a culture fit with Dan Campbell?
Well, I don't think the culture fit is an issue. Like, I think Kenny's a good player. I think when he's on the field, I think he plays hard. He does the right things in that regard. To me, it's more of, does he want to be here though? You know what I mean? Like, he wanted to be here. I remember talking to him in October and I asked him if he still wanted to be here, right? That's sort of when it seemed like there were some hangups in the contract, and before maybe he had posted on social media, you're gonna have to pay me. And he said, yeah, I love Matthew Stafford. That's what he said, right? Like, he wanted to be here. And he said that, you go back a year ago, he said that in the locker room before they were playing the Bears, and that's his hometown team, Chicago. And he said, yeah, I got Matthew Stafford here. So part of the allure for him of playing in Detroit was playing with Matthew Stafford, right? A quarterback who Kenny's he's not the burner that's going to get, 5 yards of separation on a guy. He's the guy that's going to overpower a defensive back. And when you have Matthew, who's willing to, fit balls in tight windows like that, just sort of sling one up, because he knows what Kenny's strengths are. I think Kenny has to determine if, how this Lions offense will suit his skills too, and how Jared Goff at quarterback will suit his skills versus what he had with Matthew Stafford, or what else might be out there in free agency. So, because I think in the right system with the right quarterback, Kenny can be a really good player. And so, I guess that's what I mean by the feeling out period, that these two sides have to, determine if they are a long-term fit for each other, given where both of them are at, at this time, Kenny in his career, the Lions in their state of rebuild. What about you, man? Do you think that, do you have concerns about that side of things?
A little bit. That was one thing that concerned me when I wrote about that. We talked about it with the stuff's going to cost you in the post and all that. And, under Patricia, I don't think that was the right kind of message, We don't really know that much about Campbell. Campbell says he wants to talk to players, and if there's an issue, don't just write them off and make a decision, like, talk to them. You can't always.
He likes players' personalities too, right? He'll let guys be guys as long as it doesn't impact that stuff on the field in the locker room.
Yeah, that's really easy to say before there's problems in the locker room, before there's, I want to get paid and I want to do this and I think the one thing I think is that, Kenny has shown himself a little bit to be a me first guy, and that kind of goes with being a receiver a little bit. Those guys are divas and they want the ball and they want to make plays and all that. I get that, they're a little bit different in that regard. But with this rebuild coming, he's going to have to be patient, and he's going to have to, take on a role of almost mentorship, I would think, if he's going to get a big contract, even if he's franchised. I think they're going to, when you pay a player that kind of money, you kind of it says something about what we expect you to be and how we expect you to help with the process of getting this team better.
Mhm.
He's going to get, if he's going to be unhappy because he's not getting enough balls, if he's not getting enough, action, whatever it is. Stafford used to throw me everything and I'd go get, that's where I think you have to come to terms with he and Campbell and Anthony Lynn all need to be on the same page of, look, man, there's going to be a slow climb here. Are you okay with that? And that speaks to your point of, does this team fit his needs? Is it not just about the money? Because we've seen this before. We've seen players, guys like Ndamukong Suh, go to Miami where they chase the money and it's not a good culture fit because that team's still growing. It's still not good enough. And there's frustration, so I think that's something where they need to be in line. I worry about that. Golladay is just he's not an apparently selfless, let's do it team, rah, rah, rah. He's got an edge to him, and some people like it, some people don't. Some coaches like it, some coaches don't. And we don't know enough about Campbell really to see how that would fit and work with him. But I think there's just a little bit of, they need to be sure with him,
I like it. I'd like that on my roster. I like that in my receiver. I'd like that in my players. I think, his toughness, his just the way that he can dominate the game physically. I think that's important. But yeah, that it's a fair question to ask when it comes to, and not just some of those things that you talked about too, but the money, right? If a player wants that long-term contract, we all know franchise tags, they don't typically make players happy. That's another thing to consider too. But look, from the Lions standpoint, I think it's important to have him around because if you don't, who's your receiving core next year too, right? Like, I mean, look, the Lions are not, they brought Jared Goff in for a reason, right? This is not a franchise that wants to go 2-14. Yes, everyone knows they're in a rebuilding state. And yes, everyone knows they're a couple years away from being where they want to be, right? The contending type team that they want to be. But part of the value of having a veteran quarterback, an experienced quarterback like Jared Goff, is that you don't have to go through the leanest of times to get there. And I think that's important for a new GM, a new coach, when you're instilling that program in, is that you have a little bit of success, right? I mean, it doesn't mean that you have to go 10-6 or 10-7 with 17 game season, whatever it is, but you don't want to go 2-14, right? If you go 6-10, you can at least point to things. Look at what happened with Miami 2 years ago, right? Look what happened with Carolina this year, where they're not the worst, but at least you can say, there are some things that we can really latch onto here. And so I think for that to happen, the Lions do need something in their passing game beyond TJ Hawkinson, and Marvin Jones is likely gone. Danny Amendola, we don't know if he's going to retire. So I think having Kenny Golladay around would be important for this offense too. We'll talk a lot more about free agency, next week or in 2 weeks before free agency really ramps up. But I think that's one thing to consider here as the Lions go into this franchise tag period and really start planning for the weeks ahead with whatever cuts they make, veteran, contract adjustments, who they're going to pursue, and what they're going to do with their own free agents. And like I said, I would try to re-sign Romeo. I would try to keep Golladay around, but I also am well aware of the situation the Lions are in with not much cap room.
One quick question: is there any hope that Romeo gives him a hometown discount to be able to play with his brother?
I guess it's possible, right? I mean, look, I don't think Romeo, and I don't get the sense that he's viewed around the league as being, I think Shaq Barrett is probably the top defensive end out there, right? Like JJ Watt is still going to command a really big contract, short-term deal from wherever he goes. I don't know that Romeo is quite valued that way, right? Like he had some success, obviously rushing the quarterback last year, and he did it on a pretty bad team. And there's something to be said for that. And he's still young. I think he'll play this season at 26 years old. So I think there's a lot to like about Romeo, but I think the jury is still a little bit out on him. And so, maybe there is a chance. And if he does that, the Lions can structure the deal in such a way that helps them with some of their salary cap problems. So I wouldn't rule out Romeo coming back, because I think there's a willingness on the Lions or a desire to at least want to bring him back if the situation was right. So definitely wouldn't rule that out. The other guys, look, again, I know I don't want to jump too far into free agency, but because I get these questions all the time, right? Just keep an eye on, I mean, we know how this goes every year, right? Keep an eye on those ex-Rams and the ex-Saints and some of the players that, that you're most familiar
What
with.
about the Patriots?
I mean, that's the Patriot way is gone. Now we're looking at, right, Marcus Williams, the Saints safety that's going to be a free agent, or I think John Johnson is a free agent. I mean, I think there's a number of guys that have those ties to the new regime that would fit, potentially, because Carlos, I've used this before. Forgive me if we've talked about this. I know I've used it in various radio interviews, but like I look at this year for the Lions, like 2010 was for, the couple regimes ago, right? Where they went out and they signed Nate Burleson and they signed Kyle Van Bosch, right? They signed, it wasn't the top of the market free agents, but it was good free agents and guys that had ties to the people that they were going to be coaching them, and that could help establish the sort of locker room culture that they wanted. And so I think that's what this year is for the Lions, that when you have a guy like Jared Goff at quarterback and maybe you bring in a safety that you're familiar with from New Orleans, or, whatever the case is, right? Those are guys that what you're adding to the locker room. And so I think that's ultimately the path the Lions will go down when free agency comes around.
Isn't there a quarterback in New Orleans that maybe is considering retirement? Maybe he could be coaxed to coming and.
Oh, he's not coming.
Just
Get out of
kidding.
here.
I'm just kidding.
Get out of here. All right, but speaking of quarterbacks, because I know you did want to roast me for my mock draft. So before we get rolling here, let's talk a little bit of draft, because again, that's we're 2 months away from the draft, but it'll be here before we know it. Trey Lance, or no? You're not feeling the Lions taking a quarterback at 7?
I really hope they do, actually. I think it would be a very interesting dynamic. And this is the whole anti-Matthew Stafford era that I hope we're entering. That Matthew Stafford, since maybe, I don't know, he could crawl, was a starting quarterback who never faced competition. And I think that made him a worse quarterback, because there was never any doubt. He's the guy, he's got a strong arm. People quote stupid statistics like intended yards, intended air yards and stuff like that. Nobody would be that foolish, but I think that having Goff and having a highly drafted rookie quarterback, it gives you options. Anthony Lynn has said he prefers not to start a rookie quarterback, have him sit for the first full season or part of the first season. I think that gives you good options. It gives you good competition, and I think that, I don't know the history of this well enough. I remember watching this on Hard Knocks and following the Rams a little bit, Goff's rookie season, and Case Keenum was the starting quarterback that year, and he was a veteran, and he got hurt early, so Goff had to come in and start the rest of the season. But I just wonder how much I'd like to ask Goff that, how much does that help a rookie feel like the weight of the world is not on your shoulders, but I think ultimately that does maybe lead to better performance, because it's the one position in the NFL that kind of people are scared to have competition, because then there's a quarterback controversy, and all this, like every other position pretty much has competition, maybe not kicker and long snapper, but every other regular field position does. So I'd like to see a little bit more of that. And I think a rookie quarterback like Trey Lance, the one thing I have a question for you, I don't know if you addressed this in your story, but he just doesn't have a huge resume, hasn't played that long, and he's played at a lower division. Have you watched him play much? What have you thought about his play?
I have not watched him play games. I've obviously seen some of the cut-ups online, talked to a couple of scouts about him who, look, it's a serious concern, right? There are not many quarterbacks that come in and have success in the NFL when you have that little experience. I mean, there's no two ways around that, right? He started 17 games in his college career, I think it is, right? And by comparison, I think I wrote this, that Trevor Lawrence, the number 1 pick in the draft, has thrown like 3 times as many passes as he has in college. So I have absolutely no one who has a problem with that or would shy away from drafting a player like Trey Lance because of of, that rawness, frankly. But I think he, in talking to scouts, I don't know enough about these guys personally yet, but in talking to scouts, it sounds like he has, an amazing bag of tools that sort of the way the game has gone, the way it's evolved, that he is that type of quarterback of the future, right? Strong arm, mobile, can throw it, can run it, can do all those things. And so, yes, I think given the right development, he's going to be he can be successful in the NFL. Now, look, ultimately, now I didn't do trades in my mock draft, and ultimately, it wouldn't surprise me if we see, 4 quarterbacks go in the top 6 picks or something like that, right? Maybe the Lions don't even get a chance to draft one, just because of you look at the top of the draft and how it's going to shake out and who might trade into some of those spots or what they might be looking for. I think that's very plausible that those quarterbacks go really high. But Carlos, you sort of referenced this. Look, Jared Goff sat on the bench for half a season with the Rams, right? Brad Holmes was the college scouting director then, right? So he saw that the benefits of that, right? John Dorsey drafted Patrick Mahomes in Cleveland with their intention was to sit him for a season, and they did. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL right now, right? Cleveland, no, great, Brady, all right. But no, Mahomes is still better. Brady's just a winner. Baker Mayfield, John Dorsey drafted him in Cleveland. Exact same thing. Tyrod Taylor was a starting quarterback until he got hurt in week 3 or whatever it was. So the track record is there for all of these people that are involved in these high picks. Ray Agnew, the other chief lieutenant in the Lions front office, right? That the track record is there for them to say, look, it worked in this situation. This is what we want to do with a young quarterback where he's not playing right away. We're going to develop him. And then maybe he's ready in 2022 or 2023 or whatever the case is. So that's why, to me, that draft pick makes sense.
I like it, and I think that we don't, you and I are in the locker rooms and we talk to the players and we know them, and, they're not enough. I think the people, fans and people outside of, the media and teams, they don't understand that these are still very young people. They're young adults. They don't have a ton of experience. Even Trevor Lawrence, he's going to go to a bad team, and he's just not going to have the same success. It's going to be very difficult for him to absorb, go from, one of the top college teams winning all the time, and now he's at the bottom of the NFL, and Jesus, so suddenly those defensive ends are really fast at getting to you, your right tackle's hurt or your whatever, so there's so much coming at you, and quarterback's just the hardest position in sports. I think it really helps a young person, starting, and the NFL is, that's another thing that people don't understand is the adjustment period of the professionalism that's expected of you. You're in college, and yes, you're playing at a high level program, but you had your time was kind of your own in college, and you had more of an off season. In the NFL, man, it's just a grind. It's just the season doesn't let up. It's a long season. You got to be at meetings on time. You got to be at this on time. You got to do all these things. You got to have all these different bosses, right? Your head coach, your coordinator, position coach, there's just so much pressure. And it's daunting because you're around a bunch of men suddenly, a bunch of old dudes, who have different experiences. So that year, and Jim Schwartz used to say this, used to kind of joke a little bit kind of about it, but about rookies, no matter who they were, he would say they're still trying to find out where the bathroom is in the building, there is a real adjustment period for these guys. So I think that does help, no matter who it is. I think it helps to really sit back, to be able to watch Jared Goff, and he can say, listen, I went through this too. First, I was a high draft pick. The Rams were not good when I got there. I was playing for Jeff Fisher, who promised us we wouldn't go 8-8, and we didn't go 8-8. So, all these little things that you can pick up about, this is what the life is like. This is what coaches want. This is without having to be the guy who has to make it work. And you're going to take a lot of beatings, literal and figurative, on the field your first year. I think that's a benefit. I like the idea of a mobile quarterback like Lance. I mean, he certainly seems like, just from the highlights that we've seen, seems like a very dynamic player. And And I think if they believe this is the guy, if they think, hey man, regardless of division level that he's playing at, do it. And the question is it going to be, who knows, right? What you said about trades, but is it going to be Justin Fields there? Would you take Justin Fields over Trey Lance? That's where it's kind of a little. I don't know what's going on with quarterbacks at Ohio State. They just never work out for some reason. But
Yeah.
I'm a little. There's always concern with every pick. If it's other than Trevor Lawrence, I think any other, even Zach Wilson probably has some. Nobody really knows.
Yeah.
But I do like that if they have a chance to get a quarterback, and the likelihood of them picking this high again, I don't know, in the next couple of years. So this does seem like it's a decent quarterback class. You're picking high, and hopefully you can get the guy that will work for you.
That's been my point with quarterbacks last year and this year, right? It's that if that guy is there, if you do all this research on the quarterback position, because of where you're picking, because of the chance to get the guy to be your future, you have to take him if you like the guy, right? It's not about forcing a fit, right? I mean, we talked last year about Tua more than Herbert, but Herbert obviously looks like he would have been the right pick just because he had a phenomenal rookie season. But and I don't think the Lions gave real enough consideration to the quarterback position to really consider either one of those guys. Had you done that and thought one of those guys was the guy that could be your future quarterback, you take him at 3 no matter what. This year it's the same thing. You look at these top 4 quarterbacks, really take Lawrence out, he's going number 1. You look at the other quarterbacks, I mean, even throw Mac Jones in there, right? If you really feel that one of ththese quarterbacks is going to be your guy for the future and he's there at 7, you take him. That's the bottom line, because the position is so important in the NFL. And Carlos, when you were just talking, I dug up this because you're right. You asked Anthony Lynn and he said, sit him, he prefers to play a vet. Dan Campbell was asked about that, his philosophy in his opening press conference. And he sort of said he was joking afterwards, but there's always some truth in jokes, right? And he said, well, I believe you let them go and you let them win until they can't. And then if they can't, they sit behind a veteran who can. So I don't know, maybe end of the day, right? Your point early on, the one thing I'll disagree with you on is you were talking about not having the competition for Stafford. I don't think there's enough good quarterbacks out there that there really would have been any competition like that. That's my problem. I think the philosophy that you espouse is correct, but I just, in theory, in practice, I don't think it happens because there's just not enough good quarterbacks there. And even now, with the Lions situation, look, people think I'm like really down on Jared Goff because I say he's a bridge quarterback. That's not the case. Like, I think he's a fine quarterback, right? He's serviceable. He's better than a lot of quarterbacks out there. But I also look at the reality of the situation, and that, the Lions are paying him a lot of money, and the Lions aren't going to be a very good team in 2021 in all likelihood. So whatever happens on the field, with the Lions, if they go 6-10 or 6-11 or whatever it is, are you going to look at Jared Goff and then be like, yeah, this is the guy that I want to lead me after we have a 6-win season? No, you're probably not. Fans aren't, the organization isn't, whoever isn't, right? If by some chance they go 11-5, then all of a sudden you'll be like, wow, yeah, the Lions have something in Jared Goff. But the likelihood of that happening is slim to none. And so I look at this situation and I say, all right, Jared Goff is, he's a fine quarterback. He can be your bridge quarterback. You're not going to go 2-14 with him. You're not going to go 14-2 with him. Eventually you need to find that guy at the quarterback position. And that's why I say, if Trey Lance is there, you do your research, and if everything comes back and says this guy really has a chance to be a star, if we bring him along the right way, that's why I would take him at number 7.
Here's the question with Goff is, you said you're not going to go 2-14. You're not going to go 14-2. What is he closer to? Is he closer to 14-2, or is he closer to 2-14? What do you think right now?
Well, it's sort of like, I guess it's like what Matthew Stafford told Mitch, right? Like, that Stafford looks at, his situation with the Lions, and he thought he'd be good enough to get him, 7 or 8 wins every year, but maybe not get him over that hump, right? I think Matthew Stafford's a better quarterback than Jared Goff. But I think they're in similar situations in that regard. Like, Jared Goff, unless he's surrounded by the right people, the right talent, he's not going to win that, 11, 12 games, whatever it is. It's the same thing with Stafford. Stafford can have success. I think we've always said this, right? If he's got the right pieces around him, if it's the right situations, he can have success. You can win with him. I just don't know that you're going to consistently win big with him or with Jared Goff. And so for me, as I'm as I look at, my roster building philosophy, I guess, if I was the GM, right? Like those guys you can only go so far with. You're always looking for that Patrick Mahomes or that Tom Brady or that Aaron Rodgers or whoever it is that will make you a perennial contender that can do it really by himself, to not win a Super Bowl by himself, but make you a contender like that by himself. Those are the elite of the elite. And if you don't have them, you're spinning your wheels until you get one. And that doesn't mean you can't make the playoffs, or, you're going to have some up years and you're going to have some down years, but you're always going to be looking for that next thing. And so that's sort of the situation that I see the Lions in at the quarterback position, that they may be able to have a little bit of success. They may be able to be competitive with Jared Goff or with Matthew Stafford had he stayed or whatever it was, but you're still always going to be looking for that upgrade. And so that's why I say, if you look at the raw skills, the tool set that a guy like Trey Lance has, Zach Wilson, whoever it is, and you say that guy can help us for a long, long time here and can do it cheaper than one of these vets, that's when you take that guy and you look towards the future, because that's really what your window of opportunity is with the Lions. It's not 2021, it's 2023 and 24 and 25.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that's true. And what's going to be interesting in the way we look at this, in the next couple of years with Goff, and if they draft a rookie quarterback, but especially with Goff, is we're looking at it from the Lions' perspective. But if you look at it from Goff's perspective, he needs to have some pretty good years here if he wants another good contract after the next couple of years, go to a different team, so he wants to pull an Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, you can go ahead and draft a quarterback in the first round. Doesn't matter. I'm going to win MVP this year, and I'm going to show you, they're obviously different circumstances, but he wants to really show what he can do. That's tough on the Lions because they're rebuilding, nobody's expecting them to do well, but I don't know, man, if he can do it, if he and Brad Holmes, understand each other and understand where they're coming from. And if Dan Campbell understands that and they're able to get his Todd Gurley, when Gurley was good, and find a decent running game or whatever it is, compliment, like you said, no quarterback can do it by themselves. They need pieces. That's obviously your favorite all-time Hall of Fame quarterback, Patrick Mahomes. He had some offensive linemen with a few owies, so he couldn't do it. So yeah, you need pieces around you. So that's where I want to see what Goff can do. And we have to keep that in mind with him, if they're going to rebuild the defense and spend more capital on the defense this year, and the offense is kind of going to be more in stasis of it's good enough, it would be interesting to see if Goff can put something together, in the second part of his career here, with a new team. But I do agree with you and that's where I say it's not a bad position to be in. What if Goff does end up hitting his stride, and, Mark Brunell somehow brings the secret of quarterbacking from high school with him to the NFL and makes him a better quarterback for whatever reason? Then you have a situation like Aaron Rodgers, maybe, where he's staving off. Don't forget, Brett Favre staved off Aaron Rodgers for a few years. I mean, a different situation, but it's not unheard of that an aging veteran quarterback sometimes can hold the rookie at bay. If you're winning, I mean, like you said, Dan Campbell, a little bit of truth to, we're kind of maybe going to go with the guy who's winning here. Yeah. How do you sit Jared Goff if he's winning, if he's playing efficiently, if he's doing all the right things, and so that will be interesting. And it sounds like probably they'd like to give Goff, the chance to start this year, no pressure on the rookie. My question on the draft pick for a quarterback is, I always wonder, because they never tell us obviously, but I always wonder, is it Lance and Fields? Like either one of those guys, we're taking them, or is it, if it's Lance, if he's not there, then we got to go with, I don't know, Penny Sewell or whoever, or I just wonder where their quarterbacks stack up. Zach Wilson and Justin, all that stuff. Do they really want a quarterback? Because I don't know. Like we always say, don't force it. But whoever they draft, that's who we wanted. Absolutely. Right. Trevor Lawrence was there. We wanted whatever, they pick. So I always wonder just how much the and I think they know that. I think Holmes and Campbell know you need a quarterback for the future. And they will have more draft capital next year with the Rams #1 pick and all that. So they probably could move up. But I think this might be, and I don't know who's coming out next year, but this could be a good year for them to do that. So I like your pick for Lance.
Well, to bring it full circle, you're right, Carlos. They're going to have 2 first-round picks in 2022, 2 first-round picks in 2023. Whatever happens with Kenny Galladay, if they don't re-sign him to a long-term deal, you can throw in an extra pick there by trade, by compensatory pick, whatever it may be. So again, that's why this window of opportunity for the Lions is, as Dan Campbell said, right? They're trying to win in 2021, right? They're not trying to lose. They're going to do everything they can in their power to win, and they're going to win some games. But the real window of opportunity is a couple years down the road. And so, I think it's good, as Dan said in his introductory press conference, Dan and Brad, they sort of looked at each other that first night they were together, and they said, you know what, we can do this our way. And I think that's what it is, right? They're not tied to any quarterback, be it Jared Goff or whoever in the draft. They're not really tied to anyone on the roster. I mean, certainly there are guys they're going to keep: Frank Ragnow, Taylor Deckard, Hawkinson, Okuda for now, right? I mean, so certainly there are guys that they hope are building blocks in place, but they really can sort of build this thing in their image based on all the draft capital, all the assets that they have as you look forward. And so that's why, to me, ultimately, this year is about acquiring more assets or setting yourself up in the future to use those assets the right way to help you, become the team that you want to be, the perennial contender that you want to be. And we'll find out soon enough whether that includes Kenny Galladay, whether that includes Jared Goff, a different quarterback, who in free agency. A lot to sort out here in the next few weeks. Let's leave it there. It's a good talk for a Monday morning. And, like I said, free agency is a couple weeks away. I think 3 weeks from Wednesday is the open of free agency. The free agent negotiating period begins that Monday. So maybe we'll do a video that weekend before, Carlos, and we'll talk about all the Lions options in free agency on their own roster and who's out there that they may be able to sign. So that'll do it for us. For Carlos Monarrez, I'm Dave Birkett, Freak.com.